graffiti in the low bottoms of South LA that reads BSVP, 4 letters spray painted on walls, curbs, alleyways. Most people driving through don't know what it means. Some think it's one gang, others assume it's a crew. But BSVP used to mean something different. It stood for Bloodstone Villains and Pueblo Bishop Bloods together, an alliance, a promise, a shared identity in neighborhoods where survival meant having backup. Then someone broke that promise with an execution-style killing over a drug deal gone wrong. And for the last 25 years, those 4 letters have meant war. The low bottoms is what locals call the eastern edge of South Los Angeles, where the numbered streets run into the 50s and 60s. Slauson Avenue, Hooper, Grape Street. These aren't just addresses, they're territories. Borderlines carved into concrete and defended with blood. In the 1980s and 90s, this was where Bloodstone Villains claimed their turf. Their neighborhood sat in the shadow of everything Los Angeles promised but never delivered. No jobs that paid enough to matter, schools that couldn't keep teachers, community centers that shut down or never opened in the first place. A few miles north, in the Pueblo del Rio housing projects near Alameda, Pueblo Bishop Bloods were building their own reputation. The towers were stacked with families trying to make it work, kids growing up in hallways that echoed with too much noise and not enough hope. For years, BSV and Pueblo Bishop weren't enemies. They were neighbors. They showed up at the same parties. They tagged walls together, BSVP, a symbol of something bigger than either crew alone. In a city where gang boundaries meant life or death, having an alliance wasn't just strategic, it was survival. No one agrees on the exact moment it all fell apart. Some say it was late 1997, others remember it happening in 98. The details are murky because nobody who was there wants to talk about it on record. But here's what multiple sources confirm. A drug transaction went bad. Money was involved, territory was involved, and according to gang investigators, a Pueblo Bishop member allegedly killed a Bloodstone Villains member, execution-style shot in the back of the head at close range. This wasn't a drive-by. This wasn't a spontaneous fight that escalated. This was deliberate, cold, the kind of killing that sends a message louder than words ever could. BSV demanded accountability. They wanted the shooter turned over or handled internally by Pueblo Bishop leadership. That's how these things were supposed to work. Each gang policed its own, and if someone crossed a line, their own set would deal with it to maintain the peace. But Pueblo Bishop refused, or couldn't, or wouldn't. Depending on who you ask, the reasons vary. Some BSV members felt abandoned, like the alliance meant nothing. Others felt threatened, like Pueblo Bishop was signaling they didn't respect BSV territory or authority anymore. The graffiti that used to read BSVP Unity started getting crossed out. New tags appeared, taunting and territorial. The colors separated. The truce dissolved. Trust once broken doesn't heal. It metastasizes into something worse. On a quiet afternoon in the low bottoms, a man was outside his house, vacuuming his car. His 2-year-old son was nearby, maybe playing on the lawn, maybe watching his dad work. It was an ordinary moment in an ordinary day, the kind of scene that plays out in neighborhoods across America without anyone thinking twice about it. Then gunshots. The man was shot in the back. He collapsed on the spot. According to investigators, it was a case of mistaken identity. Someone thought he was affiliated with the rival gang based on where he lived, what he was wearing, or simply because he was in the wrong place at a time when violence was the language both sides spoke fluently. He died in front of his 2-year-old son. This killing became part of the bloody ledger between Pueblo Bishop and Bloodstone Villains. It wasn't the first innocent person caught in the crossfire, and it wouldn't be the last, but it's the one people in the neighborhood still talk about, not because it was unique, but because it represented how far things had spiraled. These weren't just gang members killing gang members anymore. The war had spilled into the lives of everyday people trying to live in neighborhoods that felt like active combat zones. By the late 2000s, law enforcement had had enough. The violence between BSV and Pueblo Bishop wasn't slowing down. If anything, it was escalating. Retaliation begat retaliation. Funerals led to more funerals. In 2010, the FBI and LAPD launched Operation Family Ties, a sweeping RICO investigation targeting Pueblo Bishop Bloods. Dozens of members were indicted on racketeering charges, weapons violations, drug trafficking, and conspiracy. The goal was to dismantle the gang's organizational structure, cut off the head, and weaken the body. The operation worked, in the sense that it put key Pueblo Bishop leaders behind bars. Court documents detailed the gang's hierarchy, their criminal enterprises, their territorial claims. Prosecutors painted a picture of a sophisticated criminal organization that controlled blocks through violence and intimidation. But here's what law enforcement operations don't always account for. When you remove leadership, you don't remove the gang, you fracture it. And fractured gangs are often more dangerous than organized ones because there's no one left to negotiate truces or enforce internal discipline. Leaders went to prison. Younger members stepped up, often more reckless and more violent because they had something to prove. Allegiances shifted. Fear and survival reshaped the power dynamics inside both BSV and Pueblo Bishop. BSV, though also hit by arrests and police pressure, held onto their core territory around 50th and Slauson. But holding ground came at a cost. Members lost to prison, members lost to bullets. Younger recruits got swept in with fewer options and more desperation. Every loss, every incarceration, every killing shifted the dynamics inside the gang. Some leaders lost influence. Some members drifted away, trying to find a way out. Others stayed ferociously loyal, doubling down on the only identity they'd ever known. Drive through the low bottoms today and you'll still see the graffiti. BSV spray painted on walls, curbs, alleyways. Pueblo Bishop tags claiming different blocks. The war hasn't ended, it's just changed shape. Hood tour videos filmed in the neighborhood show what life looks like under the shadow of this conflict. Children who know the gang names and colors before they know their multiplication tables. Residents who avoid certain streets after dark, not because they're involved, but because violence doesn't ask for your credentials before it finds you. Families buried sons and brothers. Mothers raised kids who grew up hearing sirens like a soundtrack to childhood. Community centers that could have offered alternatives stayed underfunded or closed entirely. Schools where students missed class not because they didn't care, but because walking home meant crossing invisible borders that could get you killed. Examples tell stories of trying to leave, wanting to change, wanting to build something different, but being pulled back by loyalty, by need, by the simple fact that there weren't many other options available. This is the part that doesn't make headlines: the psychological cost, the generational trauma, the way violence becomes normalized until it feels like the only language anyone speaks. What's under-recognized in gang wars like this is how much of a conflict is shaped by forces that have nothing to do with the gangs themselves. Poverty, systemic disinvestment in housing and infrastructure, policing policies that focused on arrests and incarceration rather than prevention and intervention, school closures that left kids with nowhere to go after class, media portrayals that sensationalized the violence without examining its roots. All of these create the conditions where gang rivalries don't just exist, they thrive. Some BSV voices talk about how gentrification and redevelopment pushed territories closer together. As neighborhoods got reshaped and boundaries shrank, rivals who used to operate blocks apart suddenly found themselves competing for the same corners. The pressure intensified, the violence followed. These shifts aren't visible in the crime statistics or the news reports, but they shift power. They change dynamics. They make wars harder to end because the underlying conditions never change. Today, the war between Bloodstone Villains and Pueblo Bishop isn't as explosive as it was in the late 90s and early 2000s. You don't see the same level of open warfare. Daylight shootings, large-scale retaliation, the kind of violence that shuts down entire blocks. But that doesn't mean it's over. Patterns of retaliation have shifted to smaller-scale operations. Nighttime shootings instead of midday conflicts, drive-bys that happen fast and quiet. Social media has become a battlefield of its own, where disrespect gets posted online and demands a response in the streets. Alliances get made in whispers now. Betrayals are more personal. Leadership within BSB has fractured over the years, with younger voices demanding respect and older members either locked up or trying to fade into the background. Locals speak of quiet ceasefires during holidays, unofficial truces that hold for Thanksgiving or Christmas, because even in war, people want their families to have one day without fear, but those truces are fragile. Retaliation is always one trigger pull away. Tagging continues, nighttime shootings continue, the cycle continues. If there's hope in any of this, it comes from recognizing that the war isn't inevitable. It's not some inherent characteristic of the neighborhoods or the people who live there. It's the product of specific conditions that could, theoretically, be changed. A few NGOs and community outreach programs have tried to intervene. They offer mentorship, job training, conflict mediation, arts programs, small steps that don't make headlines but matter to the individuals they reach. The problem is trust. Many in BSV remain deeply wary of outsiders, especially those connected to law enforcement or city government. Many in Pueblo Bishop feel underrepresented in news coverage, in political attention, in resource allocation. When you've been failed by institutions your entire life, it's hard to believe they'll suddenly start caring now. But stories from ex-members, from mothers who've lost sons, from community organizers who keep showing up, these stories suggest there are paths out. They're narrow and difficult and require more than just individual will. They require systemic change, investment, opportunity, a belief that these neighborhoods and these lives matter. The war between Pueblo Bishop and Bloodstone Villains is woven into the fabric of life in South LA. It's in the graffiti. It's in the way people navigate their own neighborhoods. It's in the fear and resilience that coexist on every block. The question isn't whether the war is real. It is. The question is how long it continues. How many more funerals before something changes? How many more kids grow up seeing gang colors as identity before they see them as danger? How many more stories will be lost if no one documents them carefully? Because this isn't just about territory or rivalry. This is about who gets to walk home safely, who gets to grow up, who sees possibilities beyond the streets. Bloodstone Villains and Pueblo Bishop Bloods didn't start as enemies. They started as neighbors, as allies, as people trying to survive in a city that gave them very few options. Somewhere along the way, trust broke. Violence filled the space where trust used to be. And 25 years later, the war is still being fought. That's the breakdown of Bloodstone Villains versus Pueblo Bishop Bloods. If this story taught you something, drop a like and subscribe to Respect the Code for more deep dives into gang history, street culture, and the forces that shape life in America's forgotten neighborhoods. Until next time, watch your step and respect the code.